I don't think I did anything wrong. I just made a joke. The kind everyone laughed at. Now my husband's filing for divorce, and people act like I asked for it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Vera Anselm, and I don't think I did anything wrong. I just made a joke that everyone laughed at. It wasn't serious, it wasn't real. It was just words over dinner with friends. But somehow, that moment, me joking about sleeping with my husband's best friend, has turned into lawyers, papers, and whispers I can't escape. People love pretending they'd never make a mistake like mine. They share clips online, call me cruel, heartless, disgusting. But no one remembers how it started, how Eli used to be the quiet one who never joined the fun, how he made me feel small with his calmness. He never yelled, never fought, just watched everything I said and did like he was saving it in his head. I thought I was the one with control, the one who made people laugh, the one everyone looked at. Now I can't even walk into the office without feeling their eyes on me. They think he's a hero because he didn't scream, he just planned. I thought silence meant weakness. I didn't realize it was preparation. Now the papers are real, the laughter's gone, and I keep wondering when a simple joke became the end of my marriage. I don't think I did anything wrong. I just made a joke. Everyone laughed, so how could it be wrong? That's what I kept telling myself that night. It was supposed to be harmless. A dinner, a few drinks, a little teasing between friends. That's what people do when they're comfortable. But now, when I look back, I can still feel the way the laughter started to die before anyone noticed, how the air in the restaurant shifted, how Eli's face stayed so still it almost didn't look real. It started at home. I was in the kitchen, putting on mascara in the reflection of the microwave door because the light in there was better than in the bathroom. Eli was already dressed for dinner. His navy shirt, the one I said, made him look like a teacher. He'd asked me twice if I was ready. I told him I just needed a minute, and he said it softly like always. Take your time. That tone of his used to calm me. Lately, it made me feel judged. I said something like, "You act like we're going to court, not dinner." And he just smiled, that quiet, patient smile that always made me feel like the messy one. We were meeting his best friend, Ryan, and Ryan's girlfriend, Naomi, at a new place downtown. A trendy bar with dim lights, gold accents, and too many mirrors. I liked it immediately. Eli didn't. He said it was too loud. That was the first difference between us that night. He was there to catch up. I was there to be seen. Ryan and I worked at the same marketing agency. That's how Eli and I had met him again after years apart. Ryan had that easy charm that gets under your skin without you realizing it. He flirted with everyone, men and women, young and old. It was his way of keeping attention on him. I didn't mind. I liked the attention too, especially when Eli acted like it embarrassed him. We were barely seated before Ryan ordered shots. He said it was to celebrate my campaign's success at work, but really, I think he just wanted to loosen the room. I joined in because I was tired of being the serious wife. I told a story about a coworker who accidentally sent a love note to the wrong person. Everyone laughed. I was glowing with it, my kind of energy, my kind of audience. Then Ryan made a joke about how maybe the wrong person was the right one. I laughed and said, "Careful, you're starting to sound like you're hitting on me." Naomi rolled her eyes playfully. Ryan grinned. Eli smiled, polite but small. That's when I should have stopped, but the laughter felt too good. I said, "Don't worry, Eli's used to it. He knows I could never actually sleep with his best friend." Ryan laughed. Naomi laughed. Even the couple at the next table smirked. Eli's face didn't move. I felt a rush of panic, like I'd gone too far, but I covered it with another joke. I mean, unless it was a really bad day. The table went quiet for a moment before Ryan barked out another laugh, too loud, too late. Naomi nudged him, whispering something I couldn't hear. Eli just set his glass down and said, "Excuse me," before standing up. I thought he was going to the bathroom, so I kept talking, pretending nothing was wrong. I told another story about work, but it didn't land. When I finally glanced over my shoulder, I saw him through the glass wall, standing outside, staring at traffic. His reflection looked strange, like he wasn't fully there. I felt this weird mix of irritation and guilt, but I didn't chase him. Why should I? Everyone knew I was joking, everyone but him. When he came back, he didn't say a word. He just sat down, nodded when the waiter asked if he wanted dessert, and waited. I told myself he was sulking. That's how I framed it later, too, when my sister called and asked what happened. I said, "He's so sensitive. You can't even tease him without him shutting down." But that's not really what happened. He didn't shut down. He just went quiet in a way that made me feel like all the noise around me was suddenly meaningless. I couldn't think of what to say. I tried to make another joke, something like, "You look like someone stole your calculator," and Ryan laughed again, but it sounded forced. Eli said nothing, not a word until the check came. Then he thanked the waiter, put down his card, and told Ryan to give him a call sometime. It was the calmest voice I'd ever heard. In the car, the silence was unbearable. I turned on the radio just to have something in the air. The lights from passing cars flickered across his face. He looked like someone thinking about a long equation, solving it piece by piece. I said, "You know it was a joke, right?" He didn't answer. I said it again, louder this time. "Eli, I was joking." He finally looked at me and said, "I know." That should have been enough, but his tone made me feel smaller than any argument could have. I said, "Then why are you acting like I cheated on you?" He said, "You didn't cheat, you performed." That one word hit harder than yelling. Performed, like I was on stage. I laughed to fill the space. "Come on, don't make it dramatic." He said, "It already was." Then he turned his eyes back to the road and didn't speak again. When we got home, he went straight to the guest room. I told myself he was overreacting. I poured myself another drink, texted Tessa to tell her the night was weird, and scrolled through my notifications. Someone from work had tagged me in a photo. Me laughing, Ryan leaning close, Eli's hand halfway to his glass. The caption said, "Find someone who laughs like Vera." It already had 20 likes. I smiled and commented a laughing emoji. Around midnight, I heard a sound from the guest room. A faint hum. I thought it was the air purifier, but when I got closer, it was the printer. I peeked in. Eli was sitting at his desk in the half-dark, typing something. He didn't look at me. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Sorting receipts." I said, "At midnight?" He said, "Some things are easier to do when it's quiet." I almost said something sharp, but he looked so calm it unnerved me. I went back to bed. I told myself he needed space, that he'd calm down like he always did. The next morning, his side of the bed was cold, perfectly made. On the kitchen counter were 2 mugs, his rinsed, mine still half full. A small thing, but it felt like a message. Later, at work, Ryan stopped by my desk. He said he hoped things were okay, that Eli seemed off. I laughed it off, told him Eli just didn't get our sense of humor. Ryan smirked and said, "Guess not everyone likes being the punchline." That annoyed me. I said, "You're not helping." He raised his hands in mock surrender. Just saying, maybe lay low for a bit. That afternoon, a coworker showed me a short clip from someone's story. Me at the table, hand over my mouth, laughing as I said the joke. Eli's stillness in the background was what made people talk. The caption said, "That poor guy." I left early that day, pretending I felt sick. When I got home, Eli was in the kitchen, typing something into his phone. I tried to start light conversation, but he didn't look up. I said, "You can't stay mad forever." He said, "I'm not mad." That scared me more than anger would have. I told him people were taking the joke too seriously, that it was unfair to turn one line into a scandal. He said, "Then why did you post it?" I said, "Because it was funny." He said, "To who?" I didn't have an answer. He rinsed his mug, placed it upside down next to mine, and left the room. I stared at the two cups again, one spotless, one not, and for a second I hated the sight of them. That night, I dreamed of laughter echoing in a restaurant that never emptied. I kept turning to Eli in the dream, waiting for him to laugh too, but he just sat there, still, watching. When I woke up, the house was silent except for the low beep of a calendar reminder from his phone. It said, downtown 9:30 a.m. I didn't ask what it was for. I just told myself it was work, that everything would blow over soon. It had to. Because I hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. It was just a joke. The next morning, I convinced myself everything was fine. That's what I do when I don't want to face something, pretend it's smaller than it is. Eli went to work early again. I woke up to the faint smell of coffee and that same pair of mugs, his clean, mine cold and half full. I almost laughed. It was becoming a pattern now, like he was leaving tiny exhibits for me to find. I told myself he was being passive-aggressive. I even said it out loud in the empty kitchen, like naming it would make it less eerie. By noon, the video had already started making rounds online. Not viral exactly, but enough that people at work were whispering. Someone from HR showed me a meme version. Me mid-laugh, Ryan covering his face, and the text saying, "When the joke hits too hard." It had hundreds of likes. I felt my stomach drop but forced myself to smile. That's what people do now, I told myself. Everyone's a comedian. Everyone's overreacting. Ryan came to my desk around lunchtime. He looked half amused, half guilty. "You've got a fan club," he said, holding up his phone. I tried to laugh, but it came out tight. He said it wasn't that bad, that it actually made me look confident. I said, "Eli doesn't think so." Ryan shrugged. "He'll get over it. He's the reasonable one, right?" I didn't answer. All day, I couldn't focus. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be Eli saying something, anything, but he didn't text. Around 4 p.m., a calendar reminder popped up on my phone. Dinner with Tessa and Mom. I'd forgotten I agreed to it. I almost canceled, but decided to go anyway. Maybe they'd take my side. Maybe they'd make me feel sane again. At dinner, Mom was in her usual mood. Half wine, half philosophy. She said women shouldn't have to tiptoe around male egos. I told her Eli wasn't angry, just distant. She said that was worse. "Men like that," she said, tapping her glass. "They collect things, words, moments, then they use them when it matters." I told her she was being dramatic. Tessa stayed quiet most of the meal, but when Mum went to pay the bill, she leaned in and whispered, "You should apologize." I asked, "For what?" She said, "For making him look small." I said, "I didn't make him small. He made himself small." She didn't argue, just looked sad. I hated that look. When I got home, Eli was already there. He was sitting at the table with his laptop open, typing something. I said, "Long day?" He said, "Productive." I tried to peek at the screen, but he closed it. I asked if he'd seen the video. He said, "Yes." I asked what he thought. He said, "You looked confident." The tone was unreadable, flat, like a machine reading the line. I said, "I knew you'd understand." He nodded once, stood up, and said he was going to bed. It was only 9. The next morning, his car was gone before I even opened my eyes. But something new sat on the counter, a small, neat stack of papers held together with a clip. Receipts, gas, groceries, utilities. I frowned. He was never this organized. He was the type to toss crumpled receipts into drawers and forget them. Now they were lined up like a trail. I touched one and noticed the date, last night. He'd stopped for gas at exactly 9:45 p.m., after saying he was going to bed. I brushed it off. People run errands late all the time. Still, something about the precision, the time, the order, made me uneasy. I poured coffee, left my cup half full like always, and went to work. By mid-morning, everyone had seen the video. I could feel it. Conversation stopped when I entered the break room. My coworker Jenna said, "You really said that in front of him?" I smiled and said, "We have that kind of humor." She gave a polite laugh, the kind you give when you don't want to be rude. Around lunch, Ryan texted, "Want to grab a drink later? Talk about the circus?" I said yes because I didn't want to go home yet. I needed noise, light, something to drown out that quiet that was waiting for me in our kitchen. We met at the same restaurant where it all started. Bad idea, I know, but it was close to work. He ordered for both of us. I told him people were acting like I'd committed a crime. He said, "They're jealous. That video's hilarious." Then he added, "Eli just needs to loosen up." I said, "He's been quiet." Ryan smirked. "He's probably planning some grand gesture to make you feel guilty. Guys like him always do." That line hit wrong. Planning. It sounded too close to what Mum said. Collecting things, using them later. I pushed the thought away and ordered another drink. We laughed, or at least pretended to. When I got up to leave, Ryan said, "Tell Eli I'll see him soon." I asked what that meant. He winked. I hated that. When I got home, Eli was in the living room watching something on his laptop. I asked if he'd eaten. He said yes. I said, "With who?" He said, "Myself." I sat down across from him, trying to sound casual. Ryan says hi. He looked up, his eyes sharp for the first time in days. "Did he?" I nodded. "Yeah, we had a drink." He closed his laptop slowly. "You should be more careful what you share with him." I laughed nervously. "It's not like I'm telling him secrets." He said, "You don't have to. You tell him everything else." Then he stood up and went to the guest room. I sat there, staring at the empty space where he'd been. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder, something that made me feel like the house itself was judging me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The glow from under the guest room door was still there. I heard a faint clicking, like typing, and then the sound of paper being fed into the printer again. I waited, hoping he'd come out, that he'd at least talk to me, but he didn't. Around midnight, the light turned off. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like a warning. The next day at work, Ryan avoided me. He nodded in passing but didn't stop to talk. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. When I checked my phone during lunch, I saw he'd untagged himself from the video. My stomach dropped again. Suddenly, I was the only name still attached to it. I texted him asking why. He replied, "It's not a good look right now." I wanted to throw my phone. I wrote back, "You started it." No reply. By evening, I was exhausted from pretending nothing was wrong. When I walked into the house, Eli was at the dining table sorting envelopes into 2 neat piles. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Household records." I tried to joke. "You're turning into an accountant." He said, "I've always been one." His tone wasn't mean, just factual, which somehow made it worse. I said, "You're seriously organizing mail now?" "What's next? Labeling our toothbrushes?" He looked up and said, "At least that way, we'll know which is whose." I stood there, not sure if he was mocking me or warning me. Then he reached for one of the envelopes, slipped a sheet inside, and sealed it carefully. He stacked it with the others, perfectly aligned. The sound of the paper sliding into place made my skin prickle. Before going upstairs, he said, "Stop posting things." I said, "You can't control what I post." He said, "That's true." And then he walked away. That night, I opened my phone and stared at my feed. The video was still there. A part of me wanted to delete it, but I couldn't. It had thousands of views now. People were leaving comments calling me fearless, bold, funny. I told myself they were right, that maybe I was being punished for having a personality. So instead of deleting it, I reposted the clip with the caption, Don't leave your best friend unattended. The likes doubled within the hour. I felt a brief flash of satisfaction. Maybe this was the way to take control of the story. Maybe I could make the narrative mine again. When Eli came down the stairs, I turned my phone screen away, but he'd already seen. He didn't yell, didn't even sigh. He just looked at me and said, "You really think that's helping?" I said, "I'm showing people it's not a big deal." He nodded slowly, like he was memorizing the moment. Then he said, "It is." And that was it. He rinsed his mug, placed it upside down next to mine, and went back upstairs. I stayed there at the table, staring at our 2 cups again. One spotless, one stained. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which one of us I wanted to be. By the next week, I was telling myself the worst had passed. I even started pretending that Eli's silence meant forgiveness. He still slept in the guest room, still left early every morning, still returned with that careful politeness that made my skin crawl. But he wasn't cold. Not exactly. Just distant. The kind of distant that you can almost mistake for calm if you don't look too closely. On Monday morning, I woke up to the sound of the front door closing. I glanced at the clock. 6:42. Too early for work. He'd left another note on the fridge, just a short one. "Coffee's ready. Don't forget your appointment." I stared at the handwriting. The small, deliberate letters looked nothing like the quick loops he used to leave when he scribbled "Love you" on sticky notes years ago. I told myself not to read into it. At the office, people were still talking. The video hadn't died down yet. It had spread further, even getting reposted by one of those relationship humor accounts. The caption now said, "Wives who keep it real." My stomach twisted, but I laughed with everyone else. I had to. They were watching. Every time someone mentioned it, I pretended to be amused, brushing it off like I was the cool wife who could take a joke. Inside, though, every notification made me feel smaller. Ryan avoided me most of the day, but when he finally passed my desk, he leaned down and said, "Eli reached out." I froze. "About what?" He shrugged. Didn't say much, just asked if we'd talked lately. I tried to act casual. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," he said. "Just that we've been busy at work." I smiled too fast. "Good." But the thought of Eli quietly contacting him, collecting words between us, made my throat tighten. By lunchtime, I couldn't focus. I told my manager I had a headache and left early. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A calendar reminder popped up again on Eli's account that was linked to our shared app. Downtown, 9:25 a.m., Family Center. I frowned. He'd told me he was just running errands that morning. I told myself it was probably something routine, maybe taxes, insurance, something boring and harmless. Still, the name stuck in my head all day, Family Center. When I got home, the house looked too neat. Everything folded, surfaces clear, drawers closed. The guest room door was open, but his things were arranged with military precision. Shirts pressed, papers stacked, laptop centered. It didn't look lived in. It looked staged. I felt uneasy and opened my phone. The group chat from my coworkers was still buzzing. Someone had written, "Poor guy, he looks like he's dying inside in that clip." I didn't reply. I just sat on the couch, scrolling until my eyes blurred. When Eli got home that night, I tried to play it normal. "How was your day?" he said, efficient. That word again. I wanted to scream. "You know, you could just say good or bad like a normal person." He looked at me, expression calm. "Good and bad don't cover much anymore." I asked what that was supposed to mean. He said, "You'll understand soon." Then he took his dinner to the guest room. Later, I checked the fridge calendar again. A new note had appeared in his small handwriting. Meeting, personal. I wanted to erase it, but I didn't dare. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and called Mom. She answered on the second ring. "You sound tense." "He's being weird," I said. "Quiet, secretive. I think he's talking to Ryan." Mum sighed. Sweetheart, you embarrassed him in front of half the internet. He's either trying to forgive you or find a way not to hate you. Let him be. I winced. You're supposed to be on my side. I am, she said softly, but maybe your side isn't always the right one. That line made me angry. I hung up faster than I should have. The next morning, I woke up to the faint sound of the printer again. When I went to check, he wasn't in the room. The tray was empty, but a faint smell of toner hung in the air. On his desk sat a small USB drive taped under a folder labeled taxes. I wanted to ask about it, but I knew he'd just look at me with that same calm face and say something like, "Organization helps." So I left it. At work, people were whispering again. Apparently, someone had commented under the video tagging Eli's full name saying, "Find a man like this, patient but done." It had over 500 likes. I felt sick. I deleted my repost immediately, but the damage was done. Around 3, I got a text from Tessa. "Have you talked to him today?" "Not really." "Why?" She replied, "He called Dad. Said he's been meeting someone about documents." I stared at the message. "What documents?" He didn't say, just sounded calm. Too calm. That calm again. Everyone kept saying it like it was a symptom. When I got home, the guest room door was closed again. I knocked once. "Eli?" No answer. I opened it anyway. He was sitting at the desk, sorting papers into 2 boxes, one labeled household, the other personal. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Clearing space." "For what?" "For clarity." I crossed my arms. "You're acting like you're leaving." He looked up, eyes level with mine. "I'm acting like someone preparing." "Preparing for what?" He didn't answer. That night, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The dinner, the laughter, the phone screens lighting up, his expression frozen in the background. I told myself he was bluffing, that he wouldn't actually go through with anything. We had history, a home, a child, even if that part of our life had gone quiet lately. He wouldn't risk all that over a joke. I went to his door again around midnight. "Eli, we need to talk." He said, "Tomorrow." "No, now." He sighed, then opened the door just a crack. "Talking to you right now is like arguing with a headline," he said. "Everything's performance." "That's not fair." He shrugged. Neither was the joke. The next day, he didn't come home at lunch like he usually did. I checked the fridge. Another note, this time on a yellow sticky. "Bring forms." I had no idea what it meant. When he finally walked in that evening, he looked strangely calm again, but lighter somehow. I asked where he'd been. He said, "Downtown." I asked if it was about work. He said, "No." "Something else?" I asked if it had to do with me. He said, "Everything does." I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but he went straight upstairs. When I followed, he was standing at the window looking out at the streetlights. His reflection in the glass looked distant, untouchable. I said, "You can't just keep secrets from me." He said, "They're not secrets if they're written down." "What does that mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." His calm made me want to break something. Instead, I walked out, slammed the door, and called Tessa again. She said, maybe I should apologize, really apologize, not with jokes or excuses. I told her it wasn't that serious. She said, "Then why does it feel like he's already gone?" That question stayed with me all night. The next morning, Eli wasn't home when I woke up. I checked the garage. His car was gone. His closet, too. Half the clothes missing, drawers half empty. But his wedding ring was still on the nightstand, right next to a folded receipt from a print shop downtown. I picked it up. It had today's date and a timestamp, 9:26 a.m. I texted him, "Are you moving out?" No response. "Can we talk?" Nothing. By afternoon, I was pacing the kitchen. I called Mum again. She said, "Don't panic. Men like him don't make a scene. They make plans." I wanted to tell her to stop talking like she knew him, but part of me knew she was right. When Eli came home that night, He looked peaceful, too peaceful. I asked where he'd been. He said, finishing things. What things? He smiled faintly. The kind that start when people stop listening. Then he walked past me into the guest room and shut the door. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, watching the shadow of his movement under the crack of the door. The printer hummed again. A soft whir, then a click. For the first time, I didn't move closer to listen. I just stood there, realizing that whatever he was printing wasn't mine to stop anymore. The silence between us had become a kind of furniture, something heavy and permanent that lived in every room. Even Noah felt it. He'd stopped asking where his father was when Eli stayed in the guest room or left early for errands. Instead, he'd just play quietly in the living room, watching me more than usual, like he was trying to figure out if he was allowed to speak. One morning, as I was packing his lunch for school, he asked, "Is Daddy mad at you?" I froze. "No, sweetie, Daddy's just busy." He nodded, small and serious, and went back to his cereal. I wanted to believe that answer myself. Eli still moved through the house like a stranger who knew the layout better than anyone. Every night, I'd hear him typing, or the faint sound of a drawer sliding open and closing again. He'd started labeling things, folders, envelopes, even flash drives with dates written in neat numbers. It should have bothered me, but mostly it frightened me. At work, I tried to act normal. The buzz around the video had faded, but the shadow of it lingered. People looked at me with that mixture of fascination and pity reserved for car crashes and scandals. Ryan had become quiet too, like the whole thing embarrassed him now. Once, during a coffee break, he said, "You know he's documenting stuff, right?" I blinked. "What are you talking about?" He shrugged. He asked me for dates, when the dinner was, when the video went up. I thought he was just checking a timeline. I forced a laugh. "You make it sound like he's building a case." Ryan didn't laugh. Maybe he is. That night, I confronted Eli. He was sitting at the dining table with his laptop open, screen facing away from me. "Are you talking to Ryan about me?" I asked. He looked up, calm as ever. "I talk to a lot of people." "Don't play smart," I said. "You know what I mean." He said nothing, just reached over and closed the laptop. The gesture was slow, deliberate. "You shouldn't worry about what other people say," he said finally. "You should worry about what they remember." I couldn't take the calm anymore. "Why are you doing this? Acting like a ghost in our own house?" He tilted his head slightly. "Because ghosts don't argue." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." He got up and left me standing there. I wanted to run after him, to scream something, anything, to get a reaction, but I couldn't. The more still he became, the smaller I felt. A few days later, Tessa came by with groceries. She looked around the house and frowned. "It feels empty," she said. I told her Eli had been reorganizing. She asked if we'd talked. "We talk," I said, but my voice cracked. She looked at me for a long time. "You think he's forgiving you quietly, but he's not. He's removing you piece by piece." That night, I stayed awake long after everyone had gone to bed. Around 2 a.m, I heard the faint sound of his car starting outside. I went to the window and watched him drive off. He didn't come back until dawn. When he did, he placed a small box on the kitchen counter. Plain, brown, sealed with tape. There was no note. When I tried to ask, he said, "Household things, don't open it." Then he walked away. I waited until he left for work again before opening it. Inside were copies of bank statements, mortgage forms, utility bills, everything neatly divided and labeled. On top was a printed email draft addressed to E. Harding, attorney. It wasn't sent, but the subject line was there. Household and custody consultation. I sat down, heart pounding, reading the words until they blurred. I felt the floor shift under me. For a moment, I wanted to cry, but the anger came first. That evening, when he came home, I was waiting at the table. You're really talking to lawyers? I said. He didn't flinch. I'm talking to professionals. You're unbelievable, I snapped. All this because of one stupid joke? He looked at me, steady and calm. You keep calling it stupid like that makes it smaller. It was small. You're the one making it into something. He exhaled slowly. Do you know what happens when you laugh at someone in front of everyone they know? I crossed my arms. They get over it. He shook his head. They remember it forever. For a moment, I saw something behind his eyes. Something tired, not angry. Then it was gone. He picked up his bag, set his keys on the counter and said, "This isn't working." I followed him down the hall. So that's it? You just give up? He turned, quiet again. No, I handle it properly. That word froze me. Properly. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. He went upstairs. I stood there, staring at the empty space he'd left, the air still humming with that single word. The next morning, he didn't make coffee. His mug was gone. Only mine was left on the counter, half full and cold. Noah asked where Daddy was. I told him he went to work early. It was a lie, but saying it made the house feel less hollow. When I stepped outside to take the trash out, I noticed Eli's car parked down the street instead of in the driveway. He was sitting inside, talking on the phone, eyes straight ahead. I almost walked up to the window, but something stopped me. I turned back, closing the door quietly behind me. For the rest of the day, I told myself he'd calm down, that this was just his way of making a point. But when night fell, and the bed beside me stayed empty, I knew something had shifted for good. It wasn't about a joke anymore. It was about the quiet that comes after, when the person you thought would always forgive you stops trying altogether. I didn't see him for 2 full days after that. His things were still in the house, shoes by the door, jacket hanging in the hall, the faint smell of his aftershave in the bathroom. But he was gone. No note this time, no messages. When I called, it went straight to voicemail. I left a few, all polite at first, then desperate, then angry. I said he was being dramatic. I said he couldn't just disappear like that when we had a child. I said I'd had enough of the silent treatment. He never called back. On the 3rd morning, I woke up to the sound of a car door closing outside. When I looked out the window, his car was there again, parked in the same spot on the street. He got out carrying a small folder. For a moment, I thought he'd come home to talk, but he didn't even glance at the house. He just walked to the mailbox, slid the folder inside, and left again. I ran out barefoot to grab it, but there was nothing inside when I opened the box, just an empty envelope addressed to Vera Anselm. When he came home that night, I was waiting in the kitchen. "You can't keep doing this," I said as soon as he walked in. "What is this? Some kind of game?" He didn't look surprised. "No game," he said. "I've just learned that quiet gets better results than shouting." I laughed sharply. "You think this is getting you results?" He met my eyes. "It already has." I wanted to ask what that meant, but something in his tone stopped me. I reached for the folder on the counter, one of the many he'd been sorting lately, and yanked it open. "Are you really keeping files about me now?" He didn't answer. Inside were labeled dividers, household expenses, communications, media posts. Under that last one, there were screenshots of my social media, the dinner photo, the caption, the reposted clip, all neatly printed and dated. I felt my chest tighten. "You're insane," I said. He stayed calm. "No, just prepared." I slammed the folder shut. Prepared for what exactly? Divorce? Custody? Are you really that petty? He tilted his head slightly. Petty would have been replying online. I'm doing this properly. That word again. Properly. I felt my face flush with heat. You think being calm makes you right, but you're just cowardly, Eli. You can't face me like a man, so you hide behind paperwork. He didn't react, just took his mug from the counter, rinsed it, and placed it on the opposite end from mine, like always. You call it cowardice, he said quietly. I call it boundaries. For a second I thought he might actually leave again, but instead he sat down at the table. "Sit," he said. I almost refused, but curiosity got the better of me. He opened another folder, this one smaller, and slid a few pages toward me. They weren't legal documents, not yet, just notes, budgets, schedules, lists of household items, insurance copies, even a handwritten page with Noah's school calendar. Everything organized in neat columns. "What is this?" I asked. "Preparation," he said again. "For transition." "Transition to what?" "Separate management." I stared at him. "You're dividing our lives like they're files." He nodded. "It makes things cleaner." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The calm in his face made me want to throw something just to see if I could break it. "You think you're so composed," I said. "You think this makes you better than me?" He looked at me without blinking. "No, just safer." That word hit harder than any insult. Safer, as if I were danger. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "You're unbelievable," I said again. "All this because you can't handle a joke. You've turned into some kind of robot." He didn't move. "It wasn't the joke," he said finally. "It was the joy you took in it." That silenced me. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then he stood, gathering the folders one by one, stacking them neatly into his briefcase. "You don't need to understand," he said. "You just need to know I'm handling it properly." "Properly," I repeated, mocking the word. "You sound like you're talking about taxes, not a marriage." He met my eyes. "I'm talking about both." He left the kitchen then, leaving me standing there with my hands trembling and my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I waited for the sound of the front door, but it never came. He went upstairs instead. I heard drawers open, the faint metallic clink of keys. When I went up later, his side of the closet was nearly empty. Only the hanger bar and a few wire hooks swayed when I opened the door. His suits were gone, shoes gone, even his watch box. On the nightstand, another sticky note. "Guest bed folded. Keep the window closed." That was it. No signature, no warmth, just an instruction. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the indentation where he used to sleep. I told myself he was bluffing, that he'd come back down eventually, that he was trying to scare me. I even practiced what I'd say when he did, that he was overreacting, that we could fix it, that people go through worse. But when I heard the front door open and close quietly an hour later, I couldn't move. I just listened to the sound of his car engine fading down the street. The next morning, I called Mom. I told her everything. The folders, the lists, the missing clothes. She sighed like she'd expected it. "He's making sure he's protected," she said. "If he's seeing lawyers, it's already decided." "He hasn't filed anything," I said quickly. "Not yet," she replied. "But he will. He's the type who finishes what he starts." Her words scared me more than I wanted to admit. I called Tessa next. She asked if I'd tried apologizing again. "He won't listen," I said. "Then maybe you stop talking," she said quietly. "Let him come to you." But he didn't come. That evening, when I got home from picking up Noah, I found the front door locked from the inside. When I opened it, Eli was sitting at the table again. Only this time there was nothing on it. No papers, no folders, just his keys and his phone. He looked tired but calm, like someone who had finished a long job. I set my bag down carefully. "Are you leaving?" He nodded once. "I'm taking a few days." "Where?" "Somewhere I can think." "About what?" "About how to do this right." "Do what?" I asked, but I already knew. He stood up, slipped his ring off, and set it beside the keys. "This isn't revenge," he said. "It's clarity." I wanted to say something clever, something that would make him stay just to argue, but my throat closed up. He opened the door. "I'll be in touch when it's official." The sound of the door clicking shut was quiet, almost polite. I stood there staring at the ring glinting in the low kitchen light. It looked small, cold, perfectly round. I wanted to tell myself it was temporary, that he'd come back. But even as I whispered it, I knew he wouldn't, because when Eli said he'd handle something properly, he meant completely. He served me in the lobby of my own office. People saw. The papers were neat, official, already filed. Words like irretrievable breakdown and custody arrangement blurred on the page. I looked up, and he was already walking toward the exit, calm as ever. Cameras flashed from someone's phone. I tried to speak, but my voice didn't come. The doors closed behind him, and everything went silent.